right, welcome back. Today, we are diving headfirst into a real linguistic puzzle. It's a story that stretches across centuries, across continents, and even across different cultures, all wrapped up in one single, deceptively simple word. So, let's just get right to it. What in the world is a Kanban? Well, here's the thing. The answer completely changes depending on who you're talking to, where you are, or even what you happen to be doing. For instance, if you're talking to a fashion historian, or maybe an old sailor, they'd tell you a Kanban. And notice, this one is spelled with a C, is this classic jacket. You probably know it as a pea coat. Okay, but then you go talk to a gamer, right? Specifically, anyone who plays Escape from Tarkov. They're going to tell you something completely different. To them, Kanban is this massive, heavily armed boss who's just notoriously hard to take down. He runs the whole Lexus dealership with his crew. Now, let's say you're a geographer, or maybe you're just visiting Russia. Someone might point you towards the Kanban Lakes. And these aren't just little ponds. We're talking about a huge system of lakes right in the middle of the city of Kazan. And finally, if you're talking to a Russian hunter, or really just about anyone who speaks Russian, Kanban is the word for this fella, a wild boar. So, how can one word mean so many wildly different things? To untangle this whole mess, we've got to go back, way back. We need to dig into the word's oldest roots. And our journey starts in the forests of Eastern Europe. So here's what's really interesting. The Russian word for wild boar, Kanban, it's not even originally a Slavic word. It was actually borrowed from Turkic languages centuries and centuries ago. And it got so popular that it basically pushed the original Slavic word, vrapri, to the sidelines. You really only see that one in old poems or fairy tales now. So this gives us our starting point, our foundation. Kanban means a powerful, wild animal. Okay, but while that Kanban was roaming around in the forest, a totally separate word, spelled C-A-B-A-N, was setting sail on the high seas. And this story has absolutely nothing to do with boars. This one is all about life at sea. Just look at this journey from a piece of practical gear to a global icon. It kicked off with Dutch sailors back in the 17th century. They wore this heavy wool coat called a pjakker, which literally just means a coarse wool jacket. Britain's Royal Navy saw how useful it was and made it popular. Then the US Navy adopted it too. But the real game changer, that came in the mid-1900s, when Hollywood stars like Steve McQueen started wearing them and made the peacoat look effortlessly cool. And this right here, this is the key. We have two totally separate words from completely different language families. They have different origins, different meanings. They just happen to sound the same. It's a perfect case of a linguistic coincidence. One's a Turkic word for an animal, the other's a European term for clothing. Wild, right? But oh, the story does not end there. Not even close. Because once we get to the modern era, things get even more tangled. The name Kanban starts popping up in all sorts of new places, creating what you could call a real identity crisis. First, let's circle back to the boar. In Kazan, Russia, you've got the Kanban Lakes, and the local stories about the name are fantastic. The simplest one is that, the area used to be full of wild boars. Makes sense. Another story tells of a Prince Kabanbek who found refuge there. But my favorite legend? It claims a Khan's entire treasure was just dumped to the bottom of the lake during a siege. Next up, the boar makes an appearance in a super modern way. The North Face, you know them, they named one of their most popular backpacks the Kanban. And it fits. It's this sleek, tough, weather-resistant pack built for city life, but the name makes you think of that rugged, go-anywhere spirit of its wild namesake. So we go from a backpack you take to the office straight into a hardcore gaming battle. In Escape from Tarkov, Kanban is this stationary but incredibly dangerous boss. Taking him down is all about strategy. You gotta pick off his snipers, use grenades to flush his guards out of cover, and then you just have to push and push hard to finally take him down. He's a beast, just like a wild boar. And just when you think you've got this all figured out, bam, we're jumping into the world of tech. Get this, there's a software tool called Kanban. Its job, to help you manage tasks for AI code agents. Now, this is where it gets really clever. It's a pun. See, it's built on the Kanban productivity system, the Japanese term for a visual card. So it's Kanban, a Kanban tool. You gotta love how language works, right? This table really just puts it all in perspective. Today, the name Kanban can be a place, a product, a video game character, and a piece of software. 4 totally unrelated things. and most of them trace their name, one way or another, back to that original wild boar. So, after all that, what's the big takeaway? What's in a name? Well, this whole journey is a perfect little window into how language actually works. It's not always neat and logical. It's messy. And that really gets to the heart of it. The story of Kanban is, in a way, the story of language itself. It's this messy, beautiful, and sometimes just totally random process where we grab words, we adapt them, and sometimes they just happen to sound alike by pure chance. When you boil it all down, it's pretty amazing. One little string of sounds can end up meaning a fierce animal, a classic coat, a historic landmark, a modern backpack, a digital enemy, and a high-tech tool. It really makes you think, doesn't it? What other words do you use every single day that might be living a secret, totally separate life that you know absolutely nothing about? Something to chew on. Thanks for joining this explainer, and we'll see you on the next one.